Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thursday's English. Okay, almost getting towards the end of the week. What we need to do, first of all, this morning is just read one chapter of Varjak Paul together. You'll find chapter 20, that's the one we're going to be looking at this morning, is on page 146 of the ebook. And now you can find that ebook either on Microsoft Teams or on the school website. So press pause while you're finding it and press play when you're ready to listen and follow. Chapter 20. Tam didn't return that day. At first, Holly laughed it off. She's probably still stuffing her face. But when Tam didn't show up by nightfall, or the next morning either, she began to look worried. It was the same street where you caught the mouse, wasn't it? Said Holly. I had a bad feeling about that place. Varjak thought back to the strange sensation he'd had in the turning. Maybe there was something else out there after all. You know, I had a bad feeling too. Let's go and find her, said Holly, as the rain began to fall. They started in the very place where Tam had left them. They followed the turning she'd gone down into the shadows, but it just led out onto another alleyway. There was no sign of Tam, nothing, not even with Varjak's awareness. It was just an ordinary street. They ranged wider, across the centre of the city where the street cats, who weren't in either of the gangs, lived. None of them had seen Tam. They tried Ginger's territory next, near the concrete blocks where Holly had saved Varjak. They found some cats from Ginger's gang sheltering from the rain. I'm looking for Tam, said Holly. Any of you seen her? They said they hadn't. Do you believe them? Asked Varjak as they headed for the park. Ginger's gang are rough, but they are honest, said Holly. If Tam ran into them, if there'd been any trouble, they'd tell us. Tam wasn't in the park either. They searched till twilight. They found a few scraps of food, but not a sign of Tam among the dead, wet leaves. Tired and soaked from the hard rain that fell through the day, they headed back to Holly's alleys. On their way, they met a big, stripy Tom prowling in a covered, cobbled passage. Varjak recognised him at once by the slash marks on his face. He didn't look friendly. Varjak's dripping fur prickled at the sight of him, but he smiled at Holly, showing a set of sharp, white teeth. Razor, said Holly. Holly, nodded the stripy Tom. Good to see you. Where's that shaggy cat you're always with? Tam? I don't know where she is. Have you seen her? Razor shook his head. No, but she hasn't been near Sally Bones' territory, I'm sure of that. How do you know? It's my job. He licked his paws proudly. Who's this you've got with you? He flicked his tail in Varjak's direction, but didn't look at him as if he wasn't worth wasting time over. I'm Varjak Paul, said Varjak. The Tom's tails twitched with contempt. I wasn't talking to you, he said. Varjak fell silent. Nothing to worry about, said Holly quickly. He's one of us, just a pet who got lost. Razor sniffed. Why waste your time with a pet? Come and join our gang. You know Sally Bones will win in the end. This city's hers. Holly smiled, but didn't say anything. You'll be safe from the vanishings, said Razor. Sally looks after her own. Thank you, Razor, said Holly. But you know, I've never wanted to be in a gang, and I've got to look for Tam now. She began to move away. Razor stepped in front of her, muscles rippling. Come on, Holly, he said. I've always liked you. Holly was still smiling, but Varjak could see her trying to edge away. You could be somebody in a gang, said Razor, moving closer, following her. You could be important. I could make you important. I don't want... Come on, insisted Razor. I'll take you to meet the boss. I'm one of her top cats now. There was a flash of fear in Holly's mustard eyes. Varjak saw it. She told you she doesn't want to, he said without thinking. Razor turned to him. The scars on his face writhed like snakes. I warned you already, he growled. Slam. A rock-hard paw smashed into Varjak's face. Varjak reeled, stunned, and sank to the ground in a pool of rain. He wanted to get up, to fight back, but his legs were like soggy paper, and the world was spinning around him. "Don't get in my way again," snarled Razor. His words twirled above Varjak's head like stars. One hit, that was all it took, and he didn't even see it coming. The brawny Tom turned back to Holly. "When you've had enough of wasting your time with weak little losers, and you want to see what it's like being a real cat, come and find me." He padded away, tail held high. "Varjak," said Holly when he was gone, "are you all right?" Varjak shook his head. Blood trickled out of his mouth. He wiped it away with the back of his paw. It matted on his fur. "It was brave standing up to him," she said, "but it was stupid. You can't win a fight with Razor." "I'll beat him one day," said Varjak. "You're crazy," she sighed. "You've got to learn to use your brain. There's no point fighting cats like that. The best you can do is keep out of their way." "I will beat him," Varjak vowed. Whoever had left those scars on Razor's face had managed it. He could do it too. "You're not going to beat anyone today, Mr. Paul," said Holly. "Come on, let's keep looking for Tam." Okay, that's the end of chapter 20. Now, this morning, our learning intention is to write the opening paragraph of a news article. So if you think back to yesterday, I asked you to write some quotes from Varjak, Tam, and Holly. And what we're going to do today is to actually write the opening paragraph. Now, think back to our work on Iron Man. Can you remember what the 5 W's were? Press pause while you're thinking and press play when you're ready to carry on. Okay, so the 5 W's were who, when, where, what, and why. Okay, these are things that we need to include in the opening paragraph of a news article. So what I'm going to ask us to do this morning is to look at the opening paragraph of this week's Waggle. And what I want you to do in a moment is I want you to see if you can spot the 5 W's within this paragraph. Okay, so why are there cats vanishing all over this vast, sprawling city? This has been happening since 1985. Whereas it was only happening in the harbour area initially, cats are now disappearing all over the city. Why is this happening to these defenceless cats? We need answers, and soon. Okay, so there's your opening paragraph. Can you have a look, see if you can see any of the 5 W's in that paragraph, and press pause while you're looking and press play when you're ready to come back. Okay, hopefully you've managed to find a few. Now, what I've done is I've coloured them all slightly differently, and then I've highlighted the text that goes with each of these words. Okay, so you can see, why are there cats vanishing all over this vast, sprawling city? That would be a why question. This has been happening since 1985. Well, that tells you when it's been happening. Whereas it was only happening in the harbour area initially, that's where. Cats are now disappearing all over the city. That's your what. That's actually what's happening now. Okay, and why is this happening to these defenceless cats? Okay, so the who are the defenceless cats. Okay, so I've tried to get all 5 of the 5 W's into that opening paragraph. Now, the other thing about the opening paragraph is that it's very brief. Okay, you don't have any quotations in there, so those lovely quotes that you wrote yesterday, you don't need today. They'll come into tomorrow's writing. And all you're doing, you're not giving lots of detail, you're just setting the scene. It's almost the introduction. It's trying to hook readers in to reading your news article. Okay. Okay, so our independent writing today, what I want you to do is write the opening paragraph to your news article about the vanishings. Please, I want you to think about including the following. So I want it to be for you to at least, you're probably at least only going to use 1 paragraph, but if you do need 2, feel free. You're not going to have quotes from Varjak, Holly, and Tam, so I'll take that out in a moment. Okay, you will include the 5 W's in your opening paragraph, because you do need to set the scene using who, what, where, when, and why. Remember, this is a brief introduction, not the main story. And you might want to use rhetorical questions. If you think back and look back at the opening paragraph to the Waggle, that might be something that you're able to use. So that's what I want you to do as your independent writing this morning. Please submit it in to me. I'd like to have a look at it before we start on the main part of the story tomorrow. Press pause while you're writing, and press play when you're ready for the plenary. So hopefully you've written your opening paragraph this morning. Have you used everything on the success criteria? Have a little check. If you haven't, how could you improve those quotes? So have a, let's see the quotes, the opening paragraph. So how do you think that will work? Could you make it better? If you can't, then that's great. And I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow morning's writing lesson.